Welcome everyone to Infosec Live. We're back after the summer break. It's been a long break this time. Might be a bit rusty. You'll have to bear with me today to give you, our audience, the chance to learn from and interact with the people on the front line in the cybersecurity industry. Today, I'm joined by George Messum of CYBER1 Solutions, and we're going to be focusing on the important role of the channel in our industry, how to leverage the channel for strategic benefits, the value of partnerships with value-added resellers, and some myth-busting and success stories, and of course, a chance for your audience to ask our guest a question. But before we get into the show, my name's Simon Linstead. I'm the founder of the Infosec Live community, your host for this show, and by sharing stories and best practices over the last few months, it's led to 250,000 views of our content here on YouTube by you, our amazing 11,700 subscribers. So a massive thank you for that. And if you are watching this live, please do like and subscribe. We do try to make these events as interactive as possible. So make sure you drop any questions in the chat. And if you're watching this on the replay, of course, we'd love to hear your comments too, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Okay, time for me to stop rambling on. Let's bring George on. Got to get the picture around the right way. There we go. Told you I was rusty. Hey, George, how are you?
Good. Good afternoon, Simon. Great to see you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. The word channel, for me, coming into this industry from financial services, was very alien for a long time. And I know it's probably the same for a lot of the people in the community. But having learned more about what the channel does over the last few years and getting to spend time with people like yourself, it's been a real eye opener to me as to how integral and what a crucial part of the industry the channel really is. So before we dig in to talking about that today, George, give us a bit of background about yourself and then tell us what it is you're doing now.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thanks so much, Simon. Again, huge fan of the show, and again, great to be here. So my name is George Messum. I'm the Operations and Strategy Director for CYBER1 Solutions, which is a value-added reseller. So I've been working in the cybersecurity industry for just over 7 years now, all with a company called the CYBER1 Group, which is a NASDAQ-listed company domiciled in Sweden, but with operations in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I've worked in a number of different roles within that organization, starting a little bit like you, Simon, from a finance background, moving into investor relations. And then as I've grown into the company, I've moved towards a more commercial role with a bit of ops and strategy in between, covering our European region. In my sort of very limited spare time I was able to go away and study for an MSc in software and systems security at the University of Oxford. For me, that was really key and integral, particularly coming from a non-technical background, trying to navigate a very complex industry. So that was able to improve my approach to particularly selling and commercially understanding the needs of our clients. So that's me in a nutshell. And I just wanted to say, again, great to be here, and looking forward to discussing more about the channel.
It's always lovely to see people progress through businesses, and it's funny to see what different kind of journeys and paths they take. Let's before we get into the channel stuff, let's just take a step back, because there's more to you than that. And I want to know how you go into the finance bit. So we're missing a bit, really, George. We're missing the bit from school that I'm interested in, what you did, what your focus was, and then what job you came into. I'm just being nosy. And also anything else that you've achieved, because I can see tankard like trophy things up on the shelf behind you, and I want to hear about that as well.
Sure, absolutely. So I think like most people, going to university, really sort of doing it from an experience, not really set on a particular career. I probably spent most of my time, Simon, playing sport, in particular rugby. So again, I think that's given me a lot of character traits that has translated into the corporate world. But from that side, did an international relations degree background, which touched a little bit on the role of cyber, but back then, probably around 10, 15 years ago, it was much more theory, which there's a lot more practical considerations now. Again, from there, I was able to go on to Oxford, won a couple of blues, which you can see, which are the tankards related there, and was able to do that. I think the legs and the shoulders are now a little bit more tired on the rugby front, so firmly committed into the career. But again, I think the reason why this industry became so apparent, Simon, I think it's the excitement of knowing each day is going to be different. There's going to be developments and trends. I think it's a credit to people like you, Simon, who facilitate the connections that you meet. There are so many fantastic people on different stages of their journey. So the InfoSec live community is one of those ways where people can engage, and also from our side in our company, being able to add a lot of value to our clients. So waking up, being a real extension of their security teams, and just adding a lot of value in terms of what they're trying to achieve from that side. So that's a bit of a whistle stop. Really,
and I think value is the word that's come up in most of the conversations I've had around what the channel does. So let's assume we normally have a real mix of people watching, from leadership down to those breaking in. So shall we start off with what the channel is and what its role is?
Absolutely. And I think what's important to kind of set the scene around the challenges of the channel and the cyber landscape is just looking at how many vendors there are. And it's incredibly complex for CISOs, technical leaders, around how to navigate that vendor landscape. So the last snapshot I had, you had around 3,200 vendors, all offering competing services. But the reality is, though, Simon, probably only a dozen of those actually take up around the majority of the sort of market spend. So would
you argue that out of those 3,000, there's probably a lot of them are doing the same thing with a slightly different twist on it? I mean, this is my opinion from walking around RSA and seeing the same messaging over and over again.
It was going to be the very same analogy. So I attended RSA for the first time a few months ago, and I was completely overawed at the bright lights and all the distractions, but just the sheer amount of solutions pretty much doing the same thing. So if you've been employed into a CISO role for the first time and you're now in charge of those engagements, it's a complete minefield to really navigate successfully. So again, that's where we think the role of the channel provides a lot of value on that front. And I guess the reality is that 90% of spend at the start of this year has gone through some form of partner engagement, with the remaining being sold direct from vendors. So we are an integral part of the connections, really, of bridging the gap between the vendor and ensuring that the clients, our end users, are able to have the right type of partnerships suitable for their infrastructures on that side.
So trust must be a massive thing. I mean, as you said, the market is oversaturated, in my opinion, not yours. The market is oversaturated. I think we'll see that contract a bit, maybe through natural acquisition over the next few years. But then you worry about innovation being stifled. And I wonder, in an industry like this, I always compare it back to financial services. There's so many differences to it. It's very, very hard to know that.
Absolutely.
I have spoke to a lot of leadership who have been in the industry, kind of hands on keyboards for a couple of decades, and then with the more of the focus around the strategic side of it, these people have been pushed into positions of leadership where they haven't really had too much training. They perhaps haven't got that network of people around them. How do these people go about finding the right partner? Because if we're talking about trust isn't something that you get over a phone call in 10 minutes, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, we've been lucky in our organization where we've been going for so long that we've had those long-standing relationships. But you're right, if you're starting out, you need to kind of figure out, how does a CISO engage with the partner community? And I think the main thing that they need to do is really kind of try and look at the credentials of those particular partners. So again, when you're looking at certain vendors that they're trying to engage with, you need to have the skills and the certifications to successfully deliver them. You would also say that these partners need to demonstrate real life examples of how this has added value to previous organizations. So you're not the proverbial canary down the mine. You have seen this and proven to be successful. So I think certifications, I think also, if you can, one thing I really recommend is that the CISO community, in whatever region you are, I think is incredibly small. And I think if you can have CISOs being your reference customers to prospective clients, then I think for us that's how we try and approach it. Don't take our word for it. Speak to the people that have gone on this journey. They might be 6 to 18 months ahead of you in terms of that journey, and understand what the troubles they've had, what the pain and pressure points, but fundamentally, how has the partner performed in that given example? And hopefully, if they're a good partner, then there's that use case to continue that engagement moving forward.
It's the social proof, isn't it? You know, people buy off people they trust, and you trust your friend's plumber. I'll use the plumber analogy because I always do. But you'd always get a recommendation off a friend for a plumber rather than going and getting one off Google, or I'd say the Yellow Pages, but half the audience won't even know what that is. So I probably shouldn't have mentioned that. Before we move on to the value of partnerships and value-added resellers, the other thing that I always think about, and I'm going to mention a word here that I don't particularly like, and that's Gartner. I think they get enough money and publicity as it is anyway. For new firms, new vendors out there in the market who aren't on the Magic Quadrant or any of their reports, it must be very difficult for them to get in front of leadership to show them their wares, as it were. Do you, as a channel partner, do you play a big role in new startups coming on board, or is that not something you get involved with?
No, for sure. I think there are so many upside benefits for security teams to be early adopters of technology, and I think that you can see, for example, there's a lot of fantastic technologies that are, I guess it's the proofs in the pudding. They've been going for maybe 0 to 5 years, and they're now in discussions around big acquisitions into these bigger vendors that we've talked about. And you can see that if we can champion these kind of, I mean, you call them niche vendors, but it's almost half of the market spend, and there's over 3,000 of those vendors. And I just think that if you can, particularly in customer examples where you have a deep trust with the executive management around what you are delivering, you as a valid partner are going to be that filter. So all of that noise that you see at the RSA conference or other conferences, if you can be that filter and target the types of solutions that you know are going to add the most amount of value, then I think that is another way of bridging the gap, but also giving these niche vendors greater exposure. And it's something that we try to be as a bit of a point of difference in the market, as well as combining with some of the larger, more established vendors on that.
I mean, that again, and I'll always go back to financial services, it's all about knowing your client, isn't it? And understanding what their pain points are and taking the time to listen rather than trying to, and I'm not saying all vendors do this, but a lot of vendors are very square peg round hole, have a look at our offering. Whereas I think in the channel, you can be a little bit more agnostic than that and actually take more time to care about, you know, the outcomes for people. I'm conscious of time. We've got so many topics written down here and we're already halfway through. So talk to me about the value of partnerships, George.
Yeah, so I think the main thing that competent value-added resellers, they need to be that single point of contact between multiple security vendors. So again, CISOs, it's the white noise of those different approaches. If you can have a conduit to those conversations and those discussions, then I think that will streamline the workloads. The biggest challenge that we try and ease from CISO's point of views as well is easing those kind of longer term projects that are still mission critical, whilst these executives are focusing on the real challenges that are what we call business as usual. But that business as usual in the current landscape is incredibly challenging. So if we can help ease that burden and ease those conversations, and then again, what a good partner should be, they should be an extension of you and your company, and they should be in it for the long term. So it should never be a single transaction. Thanks very much, and we'll move on to the next thing. This should be deeply intertwined with the goals and values of your company objectives. So, and that's where I guess we'll get into the myths and the sort of pros and cons of the channel. I think a lot of that has been born out of potentially bad experiences, and the better channel partners are the ones that really work hand in glove with you and supporting you in your security objectives.
Okay, thank you. I forgot I had a question and I was going to ask you. Let me just get back to my thoughts for a second.
No, that's all good. I think yeah.
No, sorry, go on, George.
I was just going to say something. I think the reality is that there's so much. Obviously, we can talk about trends and other bits. There's just so many instances of threats and evolving landscapes with CISOs, and I think it is there are only so many decisions that a senior executive, particularly in the security context, can make at any given point. So if we can help reduce opportunity costs and those kind of decisions and give people the most informed points of view, then you are informed, you are ready to make those kind of decisions, knowing that you've got people in your corner effectively that are supporting you in your.
It's like an extra member of the team, effectively, isn't it?
So,
Going back to what I said before about leaders who've been thrust into the position after kind of having hands on keyboards for years and haven't built up those relationships. It's easy for us to say referrals is, where they should be looking to find out who the partners are they should be working with. If they haven't got that network of peers around them and they're not a member of, many of the online communities that share information, what questions should they be asking their potential partners, and what should they be looking for out of a value added reseller?
yeah, I think we've covered a few, but I think it's worth really emphasizing. It's got to be about credentials. It's got to be about their ability to deliver the solutions. And I think the right type of partners, at least we've seen, are specialists, not generalists. So you can visit partner websites, I think, and understand pretty quickly what type of partner approach they have. Do they have the deep expertise from a technical knowledge, from a vendor certification? So it means that they can support you pre, post, and during particular integrations. And I think that's got to be really key. We've talked about the sort of dream vision of kind of turnkey solutions, and we do see that in some clouds. I guess cloud is another example of those types of things, but there are normally that sort of time to value, that if you can realize that quick value from integrations, from your sort of security certifications, then that is the key point where you can realize the value as quickly as possible. So and I guess being a generalist is a different approach. You can cover different vendor stacks, but I think personally we've seen more value in being deep domain experts in certain.
It's hard to be a generalist in an industry that's so broad, isn't it?
Mm,
Really. And I
yeah.
think anyone who says they are it's jack
Mm.
of all trades, master of none, isn't it? I'm not pointing fingers here, but
No,
it's a
for
little
sure.
bit like that.
Mm,
Going back to that, then Prashant's question that he's put in here, it might have a bit of relevance to that topic. Having one partner, is it putting all eggs in one basket? Back to financial services,
mm.
diversification is key. Thanks for that, Prashant. Is a multi-supplier partnership key? So should you be looking for partners who specialize in different bits, or would you rather they all came to you for everything, George?
Yeah, I think it's. I think to be honest, if a multi-supplier partnership, I think it's about honesty and accountability. I would be biased by saying that it would be great to have, and we have seen examples of where you have a sole partner who is the go-to priority security solutions provider. But I think that it's horses for courses. If you've got a partner that has deep expertise in a particular field, then if they don't have that extra coverage, I think from our side we would rather sell you a solution that we know that we can deliver, versus passing it on and saying, look, this is just not in our expertise. We would again, to ensure that we have that longevity in that client relationship. So I think
Going back to the longevity piece, I mean, what's the average tenure of a security leader? They'll be at a new firm before you know it, won't they?
exactly, yeah, and we've seen leaders move from company to company, and they've engaged with us
You've been with them.
at their future place of
Yeah.
work. So I think cyber is a very small world, even though it's such a huge landscape. It's people moving between vendors, people moving within the channel, and then people moving within the CISO. So it just goes back to, if you can't deliver something, it's better to be honest about it. And if we lose business and that goes to another partner, so I think to answer the question, I think it keeps your partners honest, and the proof is in their delivery, and you will go with the best partner that can deliver what you require from that front.
And how, without getting yourself in trouble, how fickle are some leaders around those relationships, or do you find that leadership are quite loyal to the people if they're getting the service from them? Be
Well, I
keen
think
to
I
hear
think
you answer this
everything.
one.
Well, I mean, everything comes from honesty and transparency. I
Yeah.
think that's just that's for me a business approach, a sort of modus operandi, and I think it's what we try and facilitate in our company as well. So does that mean that we get everything right? But I think if you have those honest conversations, and I think that's been the key inherent trait of our company. We sit as part of a group that's been going nearly 30 years, and you can't be in this business for that long without building trust and those key relationships. So does that, yeah, it means some tough conversations at times, but if everyone's moving into the same destination, then you'll find a way, I think, by hook by crook.
I'm hear me okay, George? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Simon, I think. Yep, all good. Not sure if you can still hear me, Simon.
So apparently my internet just dropped out mid live stream. So massive apologies for that. I did speak to you. I don't know if you could hear me because I could hear you speaking.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, and then you just frozen on the screen. So apologies to you and apologies to everyone for that.
The joys of live.
Oh, don't. I'm going to blame my 19-year-old son who actually works in Aviva's cybersecurity team. I'm going to say it's his fault because he's on the same bandwidth at the moment. So we'll blame them. But right, back to it. So let's talk about some success stories and some real world examples. It might be hard for you to mention company names. I get that. But if you could give us some sort of case studies or ideas about the success you've seen, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think I think, as you say, it's incredibly difficult to go into details, but I think the sort of vision and mission statement of some of these examples. So I think one of the ones that springs to mind is when we see the impact of these solutions adding a lot of value to the point where it really changes the approach of how the executives sort of tackle their sort of security approach. So we've seen examples where, again, by filtering through the process of the particular vendors, if we see something that we think could add a lot of value, we've pitched certain solutions, particularly around kind of external threat intelligence, where the CISO has discovered potential vulnerabilities or data that is potentially available to adversarial actors. And so the impact of some of those solutions has meant actually budgets have been created to facilitate the utilization of the solutions and the services. So often we get a lot of challenges to businesses around timings, renewals, around budgets. Yeah. And it's a occupational hazard of all CISOs that there is only a finite amount that they can spend and the resources. So when we've seen them increase budget, and that means that's had a buy-in from everybody involved in the executive, the boards, everybody on that side. So for us, that's a really good value that we're providing real value add. And then I guess the other one that would spring to mind is we've seen scenarios where we've essentially looked at building in sort of post-breach kind of planning responses. So these are some of the services that VARs can provide. And it's a really basically, Simon, like a rainy day scenario. You really don't want it to happen, but are your clients prepared for those scenarios? And so we have seen instances where within maybe 6 months where we've installed a post-incident response plan, we've got all the structures set up, we've got the monitoring and observability. Sometimes things have gone wrong, and we've had clients where they've had those potential breaches, and the way that they've been able to minimize the impact, both reputationally and also from a business continuity point of view, has made a massive difference into the basically the long-standing impact and future success of that business. So again, it's those scenarios we don't wish on anyone, but when they happen, if you're prepared, then it just minimizes that longer-term impact. And we've seen countless examples of when people have done it right versus when people have not done it as properly as they should, and there are long-term implications on that side. So they're great story. I would love to tell more about where they were and different organizations, but they obviously, like for us, they just demonstrate the value of what we do day to day, which really motivates me.
Okay, thank you. What emerging threats are you seeing at the moment? What are the big topics of conversations that are keeping people up at night, and how are you how are you assisting with that?
Yeah, so I think I think one of the things we try and complement with, particularly external threats. So again, it would be remiss to not talk about artificial intelligence. It's the buzzword, but the reality of that is, I think people need to really go back to basics in terms of how are you combining all the solutions and services, and how are you complementing that with a really sound, robust security awareness strategy. So again, you can be an enterprise business and investing millions of pounds in your infrastructures. If you're not able to twin that with a successful program for your employees, then you're going to come unstuck regardless of the investment and resources. And particularly with the role of AI, it is becoming way more sophisticated than the sort of poorly worded email with spelling.
Oh, it is. I got a great one through from HMRC the other day.
Mm.
If I hadn't double checked the email, it was amazingly well written. And ironically, yesterday I got the Nigerian Prince email, but vastly improved. I mean, you're still not falling for it, but it was very well written, and I think AI's got a lot to be said for that. Although going on about AI, I do feel like all the vendors in the AI space at the moment are just waiting for something to go wrong, because all of their products seem to offer the solution to so many problems that we haven't seen yet. So I think it's a good place to have a bet. One of them's got to come off at some point, right?
Exactly, and I think it's, people will be aware of those types of phishing emails, but are they aware of, the sort of real doomsday scenario is if you've got a senior executive in your company that they can, they do lots of public speaking and sort of videos. If you can capture enough audio and then
I think three
that,
seconds. 3 seconds
yeah,
is what I've been told. Yeah, that's
and
all.
like you
That's
say,
all they need.
it's incredible on that front. So we see, yeah, AI is definitely one. I think, it's I've got my international relations degree hat on, but I think definitely the wider geopolitical landscape, I think, is exacerbating a lot of these challenges. Nation state actors, the resources, the investment they have, can do a lot of damage to a lot of public infrastructure, and very easily private organizations as well. So I think there's a lot of destabilization, but hopefully some of these, the technological developments, can be used on the flip side to try and mitigate it. So we see it around automation in security operation centers, being able, being able to streamline decision making and removing alert fatigue. There are some real tangible benefits that people can glean from the role of AI, as well as perhaps worrying about the challenges on the other end of the spectrum.
And it is all very much doom and gloom at the moment, especially geopolitically. But at the National Cyber Awards last night, we had the head honcho from the National Cyber Force, which I didn't even know was a thing here in the UK, and he was talking about how all the different agencies work together with the vendors and the technology providers to constantly monitor. And it makes you feel a little bit better about the threat landscape to know that you've got, it's a great industry for that, whether it's private or public sector. Everyone's working together to try and do the right thing. One question I want to ask before I bring up Brian's as a last question, because we were chatting about this only earlier, and it's something that I'm interested in as well. I was having a conversation week before, with a security leader in the US, and he said the number one thing for him when onboarding a new vendor at the moment is looking at how easy it is to exit from them at the end of the contract. Do you find that is increasing, or has that always been like that?
Well, I think it's been there, but I think, Simon, as you've alluded, it's become more of a question, particularly as a lot of vendors are trying to provide a broader spectrum of solutions.
Don't say single pane of glass. Don't do it.
Exactly. For sure. And I think it's the reality of that, risk of vendor lock-in. And I think, CISOs and security leaders need to be aware, and this is where the channel can help facilitate, ensuring that you're choosing the right vendors from the outset is the first priority, and then ensuring that you can implement and successfully run these solutions for that longevity. But I guess we talked about trends a brief minute ago. I would 100% look at what vendors are investing in, what new technologies are they acquiring, because you can get a bit of a steer in terms of their future direction. And I think you'll start to see some vendors drop off potentially because they're not keeping up with the right investments and the right acquisitions in their portfolio, for sure.
It's definitely interesting times. Before I bring up Brian's question, I'm just going to bring this QR code up. If anyone's brave enough to scan it working in cybersecurity, I can promise you it's safe. If you'd like to find out more about CYBER1 Solutions, obviously you can reach out to George through LinkedIn. I think he's in the Infosec Live community as well. If you want to find out a little bit more about what they do, please do scan this here. I've known the team at CYBER1 now, I think, for well over a year, and I've been very, very impressed with every interaction I've had with them. So definitely give them a look if you're looking for a new partner. And while I'll leave that up, let's just get back to the chat, because Brian's question. Brian's coming from a sales AM background, and channel AM role is one I've targeted. Are there any key skills or certs that would help with this? Just started my master's in cyber management.
Brilliant. Well, obviously, good luck, Brian, with the masters. I think what's comforting is that I actually see a bit of translation in terms of my own journey. So, again, I've not come from a technical background. I chose a cyber masters to try and provide that holistic view. I think the way that I have learned the most, though, is kind of how it practically is translated into a security infrastructure environment. And I've been able to do that basically by speaking to people in the community. So understanding their pains and their pressure points. In terms of specific skills, I think it's where you want to sit in the kind of sales cycle. If you want to be more into sort of the sales engineer, pre-sales engineers, then the certifications might be a little bit more important. But actually, what I think a lot of the vendors do really well is that they provide the sort of sales-specific certifications that are much more of a sort of lower barrier to entry from a technical point of view. And it enables you to understand the solutions very well. And then obviously you apply that use case when you're selling to prospective clients. So I think they can definitely help, but my own personal experience is definitely the more you're engaging with the communities, the more you're engaging and reading around the types of solutions, then I think it's going to make much more value for you. And obviously, I think we've actually talked about it in separate conversations, Simon. There are so many vendor certifications, so many normal skills that you can just get lost in between it. And is it going to move the boat quicker in your career? If you're starting out, I would say probably not as quick as most people get sold.
I mean, I've personally spoke to Brian. Let me bring that QR code back up on a couple of occasions, and he's a very affable, personable chap who would be amazing in the industry and sales. My suggestion for you, Brian, rather than focusing on certifications, is focusing on connecting with people like George and others who are in that part of the industry and having conversations with them, because those relationships are the things that are going to open you the doors. I think sales is, for someone like you, Brian, who's naturally good at people, I don't think it would be too hard for you to get into it. I just think everyone's so hung up, and this is a personal opinion, not anything more than that. Everyone's so hung up with passing the exams, thinking that's going to be the way in, and that just isn't what I've seen in the 4 years that I've been in the industry now. Don't get me wrong, people have come in that way, but it's the people who network with the people who are doing the jobs that they want to do, make those connections. I think for me, that's the way forward. But I'm conscious we're out of time, and I still haven't brought that QR code back up. Any words of wisdom, George, to finish off before I go and have my afternoon siesta? I'm getting used to this, getting ready to live in Greece time, you see.
Absolutely no. I'm very jealous on that front. I think the main thing, or I guess the main takeaway, is effectively do your due diligence on any partners that you want to engage with. And again, the better partners will be the ones that have the deep domain experience. They're the ones that have basically shown a real proven use case and how the solutions they're selling to you. There's a small query on the end from Dean around how do you
I just saw that.
How do you sort of differentiate between the marketing and the substance?
Well, let me make a quick comment on that. I think most of the vendor websites you look at, you can look at them for 5 minutes and still not know what they do.
For
personally.
For sure. And so I think the way to get a partner really to understand your needs is the first step. But definitely if you can do trial demos. Most competent vendors now will give you the sort of proof of concept within your own environment, whether it's read-only access or very light touch in terms of your security infrastructure. So that's going to be the proof in the pudding around the real value case. But you need to work with those partners that can help you manage that sort of time to value as quickly as possible. If you do that, you'll have great solutions at a huge amount of value and enable you to focus on growing your organization, which is the main thing that most people try for on that front.
Love it. Thank you, George. It's been a pleasure. And I'd like to get you back on at some point and just focus on sales and journeys in, because I think there's an awful lot of people out there. We need some fresh blood into sales in this industry, in my opinion. And I think people from different industries really bring a lot of value. So let's get you back on. But everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I've dropped George's LinkedIn in the chat. If you want to connect with him, reach out there. Again, check out CYBER1 on the QR code. Thank you so much for listening. George, thank you so much for engaging today. It's been a lot of fun. I shall play us out with another probably too long video, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Simon.
Take care.
Take care all.
Cheers. Bye all.